and going into a new one. And I hope, we're going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. But I hope you're doing well in all of it, and I hope the new one looks better for you than maybe some of the old one. I hope that's true for all of us. Oh gosh, especially some who have really, really, really suffered this year, and others who have actually lost loved ones. It has been quite a year. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But before that, if you're just joining us for the first time, you might not know this is a call-in program. And I'm going to give you the number. It's 844-940-2774. 844-940-2774. 844-940-2774 to get on the air. And you callers, you are you're kind of like, you make everything because you give us the stuff that we talk about here, and broadly that falls into all the categories that would fall under my purview as a whatever I am, psychologist. Am I really a psychologist? I thought you had to be mature to be a oh well, I'm working on it. Anyway. Enough said about that. Yeah, all that stuff that psychologists talk about, the clinical stuff, depression, anxiety, fears, addiction, stress, all of that stuff, personality disorders. Ugh. And you might have a relationship with one of those. And specifically, speaking of relationships, we talk about relationships on this show. Family, marriage, parenting, in-laws, adult children, adult parents, if there are any, all sorts of relationships, in-laws, work relationships, siblings, all that stuff. And then your goals and dreams and how we go about reaching those. And there's actually a lot of science behind that. So that's what we talk about. So call us 844-940-2774. Remind you quickly also, sometime, even while you're listening to the program, go to boundaries.me, and look at all of the material. We've got over 80 courses now. We keep adding them all the time on different areas of life that you can watch for your own growth, and also to sign up for the big New Year's resolutions webinar on January 4th. I'm going to be talking about the science of New Year's resolutions and why it works when it works and why it doesn't when it doesn't. A lot of times they don't. So join us there to make yours work. Boundaries.me/2021. Okay, enough of the announcements. It's sort of like, it reminds me of the old church formula. Remember when you were a kid, at least when I was a kid, you go to church and they give all these announcements. Aunt Molly's going to have a Jello party in the church basement on Tuesday. Be sure and don't park next to the fire hydrant because that's where the neighbor's dog goes. So everybody join us. I hope our announcements aren't that bad. Anyway, what was I going to say? Okay, so here we go. End of the year. I think my brain's raveling here a little bit. Speaking of raveling, that's my end of the year topic. We were talking about it before the program, and the phrase that Greg on our team used was loose ends, tying up loose ends. A lot of people, you think about the new year, and mostly they think about escaping the loose ends, right? Let's put it all behind us. Let's wipe the slate clean. We're going to start over. And by the way, that really is a smart thing to do. One of my favorite verses says, God's mercies are new every single morning. Doesn't matter how you screwed up yesterday. We're starting over. Starting over is something that you see, and I'm very serious about this. People don't think about this a lot. Starting over is something you see not only in research and empirical data where starting over can help, but in the Bible. there's some significant startovers, some resets. Every 7 years, they would just, wipe out all the debts, right? If I owed you something or you owed me something, we just start over. We screwed it up enough by then, and a bunch of other agreements and all this. We are so screwed up. Oh my gosh, look at what we've been able to do in 7 years. And let's put it all back in the box and get the monopoly board out and start over. A fresh start, a clean start. And then was it 50 years, they would have the big one. And you see it all the way through. Sometimes also in Ecclesiastes, it talks about seasons, that sometimes you just give up on what you're trying to fix. It says and sometimes you spend all this time planting and you uproot what's been planted, and it says you embrace for a season, but then you refrain from embracing that anymore. And things that you bought into, I'm not going to buy, I'm going to start something new. And that's a good thing. So that's what people think about when we think about New Year's coming our way. We're going to start anew. Let's forget the old. Well, that's good, but not so fast, New Year's breath. Not so fast. Because as research will show and prove, and as a bunch of my favorite verses say, those mercies that are new come on the tail of dealing with what was old. Basically, you've heard it. Yeah, there's a new day tomorrow, but you got to confess what you've done that's screwed things up. Confess that. You got to turn from it and decide, okay, I don't want to be that way anymore. That's the old-fashioned word for that's repentance. Gosh, I'm sorry I treated you that way. I don't want to treat you that way anymore. I'm going to go in a different direction. That's repentance. We're going down a new path in marriage, or some relationship, or some career, or work patterns, or health, or whatever. But you can only have a new path if you're not dragging the old one with you. There you go. So tying up loose ends is a great metaphor right now, this time of the year, in looking back. Now, you might not have time to tie them all up before, Friday, but you can at least do a little bit of an audit. A little bit of an audit. I do this periodically. I sit down in a quiet place and I think, is there anybody I have anything unresolved with? Just kind of nags at me, like there's a conflict. We never really talked through that. We never really fixed that. And then, we'll have all the defenses against that. Well, so if they got a problem with me, they ought to call me. You hear that all the time. Every time I hear that, I just want to throw up. One of my favorite verses, it says, not if somebody's got a problem with you, you wait until they call you. It says, somebody's got a problem with you, so if your brother has aught against you, you ought to have been different, they feel. Then it says, don't even offer up your prayers or your offerings. Stop. God's not listening, sort of, basically, kind of, it seems like in that passage. Until you go and reconcile, do your best to work it out with who you got a conflict with. Puts the onus on us. Also, if we got a ought against somebody, if they've hurt us, guess where the responsibility lies? It lies on us to go talk to them. It really doesn't let us escape this thing from either direction. If there's a problem in a relationship, we should go and work it out to the best of our ability. Sometimes people don't want to, but you can do all you can, right? So I was doing this not long ago. I do it periodically. I did it this past week. I had to call somebody. And I did it about a month ago. I had to call somebody and talk to in a long time, but it just been nagging me, kind of how it was left. It's really good. It's really good for you to clean up loose ends. stuff you got with people, or it might not even be in a relationship. It might be really dealing with yourself and looking at that guy in the mirror or that woman in the mirror looks back at you and being honest with them about where they are, where you want to be. You know, there's some failures I really hadn't let myself deal with, hadn't grieved them maybe. It's basically going to be a couple of pillars that dealing with loose ends as we look back in the year. Let me give you a few to think about. Losses. And what I mean by losses, we'll give two meanings to losses. The first one is not losses. Well, let's deal with the first one, get it out of the way, because it'll confuse us on the second. That if you've lost something or someone, a dream died, you lost a relationship. Sometimes, and obviously the most serious ones is, when we've lost somebody to death. Losses are big, and losses are meant to be dealt with, and God wired you to deal with them. He gave you tear ducts to flush it out. He gave you a heart. It's got two pipes coming in, two pipes going out. And sometimes the stuff that goes out is pain. It's got to wash out. And that requires caring on the other end of it. We need to sit down with somebody that cares. If you've had losses, and you need to grieve those. And one of my favorite verses, it says in Ecclesiastes that a sad face can make a heart happy. If you're depressed and you get sad, and wash out some of these losses, that can cure your depression. We know that also from science. So there's some losses. Maybe it's time to sit down and really deal with those. And they might not be from this year. They may be just anything in the past up until New Year's Eve. Let's deal with those loose ends. Maybe you need a group. Maybe you need a therapist. Maybe you need a friend. But let's finally deal with it. Another kind of loss is the loss of a failure or the loss of a dream. I remember one consulting project I did with a company that kept investing every, handful of years. The CEO would take them on a crazy, crazy project. And I heard about a few of those. I said, wait a minute, let's get the timeline here. I looked at it, and you know what? Every time they would have some kind of something that didn't go well, he would launch into something new. It's like a rebound relationship. Same thing you see in people's lives. Sometimes people don't deal with their losses. They rebound, try to do something that feels good to get away from it. But that same passage, one of my favorite verses in Ecclesiastes, it says, it is better to go into the house of mourning than the house of pleasure, because a sad face can make a heart happy. In other words, trying to make your heart happy, don't go into the house of pleasure. In other words, people they'll just go party, they'll go drink or use drugs or, illicit sex or some, go feeling down, go to a porn addiction or some kind of pleasure to get away from that pain instead of going into the house of mourning. What do we see when people recover? They go to their meetings, the house of mourning, and they grieve it, and they process it, and they talk about it, and they get over it by doing that. So some losses we need to process and get clear about those. Some practices, some ways that you want to change. All of those things have to do with tying up loose ends. Now, once we do that, and you might not be finished with it, but you faced it. Once you just face it and say, I'm going to deal with this, and you take a step to deal with it, you're clean. You're not done, but you're clean. A lot of times we may not be finished with something, but we're clean. You're clean. It's like you've had an infection. You go to the dentist and, he drills it, takes all that out. And you're going to hurt for a while, but you're clean because you dealt with it. Might take a while to heal, but you're clean because you came to the light with it. You're going to feel clean if you do this. All right. So end of the year, let's tie up some loose ends. And beginning of the year, we're going to have some new ways. See, now Now we can turn and we can go in a different direction because they're not dragging old baggage with us. The human body. I like to think of this metaphor sometimes that basically God has given us ways to metabolize food, right? What do? You take in food, your body breaks it down, it uses what's useful to you, turns into new bones and cells and structures and energy and all that stuff, breaks it down. And then you eliminate what? You eliminate the waste. The Bible talks about this a lot. It says that's just a bunch of dung, is the way you see it translated, usually in the New Testament and the Old Testament. The word actually that they say dung, it's a worse word than that. I'm not going to say it on there because I'll get angry letters, but that's one of my favorite verses. It says it's a bunch of crap and worse words. Why? Because it's of no use to you. It should be left behind. Okay? But there is metabolizing experience that is waste. And you shouldn't walk backwards in life. Because if you walk backwards, you're going to step in it. You're going to take it forward with you. It's supposed to be left behind. And the other way that he has given us to metabolize not food, but experience is also through excreting what is not useful to us, and that is the pain and the grief. And here's where you excrete it, right here in your tear ducts. And there's a reason God put your tear ducts in your eyes. He didn't put it somewhere where you would cover up. He put it where you could be seen, because everybody's pain, when you're processing pain, the bad experiences through confession or grief. If you've been hurt or lost something, it's going to be grief, the tears of grief. If you are sorry over something you've done, it's going to be tears of contrition and sad about how we failed in a good way. I'm sorry I did that to you. And if our tears come out and they're seen by somebody that cares, it is finished. And we can go on. So I want you to have some good New Year's resolutions. Join me on January 4th for the New Year's resolutions live webinar about how they work. But one of the ways that they don't work, and this little clue right here, is they don't work if we're dragging old stuff into the new. Can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that. So let's deal with the loose ends. All righty. There's our word for today. We're going to go back to the phone, or we're going to go to the phones for first time today. I got to pull it up here. Sorry, I was getting lost in our loose ends, and there we go. Okay. Oh gosh. Let's go to Karen, calling us from Virginia. And I just saw the first line, Karen. It says your mother died. And welcome to the program. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Cloud. My mom died on Saturday night, and
I am sorry. Was it expected?
She was 91, so it was time for her to go. But that's not really the issue here. It's my brother and sister and I need to, plan the funeral. It's going to be tomorrow, and then we need to settle the estate. And my brother and I were like, we had a conference call. Okay, everybody, we're just going to get everybody's opinions, and very pleasantly, let's, just try and figure out what we're going to do with the funeral. And the first thing she started to talk about was the money. She wants to know the estate accounting, and my brother is the executor, a very honorable, responsible Christian guy.
Oh,
and
good.
She launches in here.
So she actually had everything in order and has an executor named.
Yeah, and that's him,
That's great.
But I caught my sister this summer trying to get my mom to sign a codicil that all three of us would be a trustee on the estate rather than just my brother. And I said, that is not necessary. Sam will handle everything. We don't need to be involved in this. And she was upset about that. So the bottom line is the rage that came out of her on the phone, we couldn't even get to the conversation about the funeral and what we were going to have, because she immediately started talking about money and how we all have a legal responsibility to settle this estate. But
is this new behavior for her, or is she kind of like this and she's difficult?
Well, here's the thing. It's pretty new. She was never this bad, but this summer she kind of seemed to go over the edge. And I think because
hold on a second, because I'm trying to get a picture of her. You said she's never this bad. Was she like your brother? Sounds like honorable guy, easy to talk to. You got conflicts, you work it out. Is she on the more difficult side in general?
Yes.
Okay.
And I suspect, well, I know that she does recreational weed a lot, and I know she drinks a lot. My mother was a difficult character. She had borderline personality disorder.
Oh.
So we always thought that my sister definitely had depression, anxiety, and anger issues, but never to the level that it came out this summer when she realized my mom was dying and not going to get better. She became so angry and aggressive and critical of us. Now, she lives out of state, and so do I. So my brother is handling all the health care with my mother and dealing with all the trauma. And she's calling from out of state, yelling at him, telling him he's not doing the right thing, to the point where the hospice nurse had to get on the phone and say, your behavior is not helpful and it's not accurate. And the hospice nurse.
So somebody set some limits with her. That's good.
Right. Yeah. But here's the problem. We just try and keep some distance, and when you try and engage with her, she gets really angry, so she tries to bully everybody, and then people just back away from her.
Except the nurse.
Except the nurse. The nurse got on and said, you're a seagull. You're a family member who flies in and makes a mess of things and then flies away. And, you know, he didn't say that to her. He told us later, but he said, I've seen this before. The minute your mother dies, you can be done with her. But I don't want to be done with my sister, but she won't. When we try and talk to her and say, why are you being so mean to us? Why are you being so hostile? Why are you being so angry? Her response, gaslight. Why are you being defensive? You know, she never owns her own behavior, never accepts.
I get it.
Where is this rate? Yeah.
I get it. She's got some issues, at least. So what's the question?
The question is, the funeral is tomorrow, and it's going to be virtual, so we won't be in person. But moving forward, we're going to have conversations about settling the estate. So when you get in these conversations and the anger and the hostility is there from the get-go, how do we work forward to try
let me ask a practical question here. Is it when you say we're going to have discussions about settling the estate, a lot of times it's so spelled out that there's nothing has to be negotiated. A lot of times, though, there are things that were left, you know, like particularly, you know, possessions, heirlooms, art, furniture, stuff like that. You know, you guys work it out who wants what and that kind of thing. And so how much has to be worked out versus how much does your brother just have to execute?
Pretty much he just has to execute. I'd say probably 95%. Yeah.
Great.
It's just hurtful that we're like, where's the anger coming from? And we don't feel that way toward you. Why are you acting that way toward us? Like,
okay. So what is the question?
Think there's any hope.
What's the question?
How do we deal with that? How do we deal with the rage going forward when you're trying to talk to someone civilly and they won't hear it? They just verbally abuse you.
Well, you don't talk to somebody who's verbally abusing you. And first thing I would do is I'd try to set some ground rules around, the funeral time, this is a very, very important time for your family. And it's not the time to bring in all
Yeah.
of this crap. And so
Well,
it's really,
I
really
said that.
important. I'm sorry.
Oh, I said that to her. I don't think this is the time to be talking about
Yeah.
that. Let's just plan the funeral. And she said,
Yeah.
I don't need you speaking for me.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm talking about for the funeral. So I would set some ground
Mm-hmm.
rules, and you and your brother, can do this. You know, uh, this is the time for the funeral, and this is going to be what we're going to do at the funeral. Whatever it is, we're going to talk about mom and our experiences and our love for her, and tell some story. However, you're going to do that, and there won't be any discussion about this estate until, and I would put a date on it, and we will have a call at that time, okay, to discuss this other stuff. So I
Okay.
put a boundary around it, and I would limit it. And I think it's best that the three of us talk about that, and probably shouldn't have conversations about that offline because it leaves out another person. It's weird. So I would set, just a structure for that. And then I would say, going up to that, we've had some difficult conversations in the past about this. I'd like to have some expectations that we would listen to each other and be respectful of each other's opinions, and not be screaming and angry and whatever. I'd set that expectation. Okay. Then what I would do
Okay.
is you go into the call, and if she goes into the call and she's unmanageable, then I would say, you know what? This is how we, let me say it a different way. We agreed we weren't going to let it go this way. This isn't productive. So we're going to end the call right now, and we'll try again in a week. And if we can do it then without this kind of anger, I would just put some limits on it, exactly like the nurse did, and say, I'm not going to have a conversation when you're screaming at me. And just be very
Okay.
clear. Now, another thing that I've seen very, very effective in these situations is sometimes what this person will do is they are going to really, really challenge your brother, and
Correct.
challenge every decision, undercut every decision. Want receipts from 500 years ago, want to see bank statements. I mean, it's just insane what people do in this scenario. And so what I've seen
Exactly.
is she's already started that or talked about it probably.
Yes.
So because
No, she
she's
started it right
convinced,
away.
yeah, she's convinced that he's screwing everybody, right? So here's what you do. And this will make his life a lot easier. If she wants to list the things that she is contesting or whatever, then that's great. Okay. And here's what you do. You can do those, send them to me in a letter. I'll answer them. If you're not happy with my answers, then we can schedule a call, and the estate's attorney, the one that drew up the will, okay, the attorney will be on the call as well, because what the attorney will do is the attorney will step in and say, that is the executor's call, ma'am. That's what executors do. He has the perfect right to do that. Next issue. And the attorney will be setting all of the limits, and they'll have the law on their side. And that will help contain her. And you won't, have to deal with all this stuff, because the presence of an outside person, but the role of the attorney and the law, that she can't do by law, she can't interfere with the executor in his role. And so that'll stop that. And then you can deal with the relational stuff, it's some future time. That's what I would do.
Okay. It sounds like a good plan.
And you know what? One more thing.
I appreciate your.
One more thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell her this: if she wants to go down that road, I would tell her this, that, okay, here's the deal, Susie. We can do this, but that attorney's going to charge for that time.
Yeah.
And the estate is going to be billed, and you are going to be paying for the attorney's time for everything you contest. So just remember, these arguments are not free, and the attorney charges $1,000 an hour. Okay, so every time you
Right.
do this, and if they're just reading your letters, the clock's running. So you have consequences built
Yeah.
in. Okay, and then you might want to go to family counseling or something if you want
Yeah.
to do that. All
It
right,
just
does that
shocked
help?
me. We didn't expect this. It does. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Well, let me say something to you. Okay, I'm gonna try to help you here. Are you there?
Okay. Yep, I'm here.
You talked to me about it maybe 45 seconds, and
Yeah.
I expected it, right?
Right.
I told you what it's going to look like, and you're going, yeah, that's happened. Yeah, that's happened. Yeah. Now that's not because I'm smart. That's because I've seen 80,000 of these, and when
Okay.
the nurse has to do what they do. So my point is, I'm not emotionally involved, so I can see
Right.
clearly. And what happens is,
Okay.
as a sibling, because of your attachment to her and the grief and all the stuff y'all are going through, her grief, probably this has escalated. She's losing her mother. Her mother's borderline. She probably has or could have separation individuation issues with her mother. She's, this is what happens in that kind of personality organization. And she's not even herself right now. And it's got to be contained. And so I could see that because I'm not attached. But you're going to have some people, you and your brother and some people helping you see this, because it's pretty clear when somebody's raging at you that that's not a time to work something out. So, and when you say I
Okay.
didn't expect it, I know you didn't expect it, but you're going to have to, based on her behavior, kind of expect it, is my point.
Okay. That's
And
a
if she
reality check. I appreciate that.
yes, and if she shows up as, I don't know what was Julie Andrews' name in The Sound of Music, the nice nanny. If she shows up very nice, then you got a pleasant surprise. But I would plan for what she's already shown you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. I'm sorry for your loss, and I hope you guys can go through this well. Thank you. Oh, tough times in families, and you think sometimes. Sometimes when somebody dies, you think, well, it's the end of that season. But sometimes, speaking to our earlier topic, things are unresolved and the patterns are unresolved. They're going to go into the new year. And that's really, really tough. Okay. Let me see. Where are we here? Okay. Let's talk to Dana, who's calling us from Southern California, down the road from me. Dana, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dr. Cloud. I so appreciate all your help to all of us on this program.
You're so nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so my question deals with my, I guess I'm going to call it extreme fear and anxiety of COVID. I did listen to your webinar on fear and anxiety, and thank you. That was so helpful to me.
Oh, good.
I think my question, I have a big history. Genetically, I have a history of fear and anxiety in my family, but I also, as a little girl, just had a huge fear of diseases and hospitals. And so I've been through a lot of counseling and managed that in my adult years as best I can with some tools. But then this COVID thing comes along.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. I want to get a picture of what that means. You've been through a lot of counseling and managed it with some tools. Can you briefly, are you in counseling now about this?
No, not about this at the moment.
Okay, and when you've managed it with tools, what do you mean?
Okay, I would say relaxation techniques, kind of facing the truth. I'm really trying to summarize a lot of therapy in a few minutes. Trying to face the reality and the truth of whatever it is I'm afraid of, meaning go get cancer screenings or things like that that make me nervous, but I know it's the best thing. But then as far as a panic attack,
And now when you say go get cancer screenings, do you mean frequently every time you're anxious?
no. Just like the mammograms every year. And to be super honest, they make me really nervous. Real nervous every year. But I do it anyway. And I tend to get scared the minute I come home, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get that phone call that's saying we found something, come back. So that's like this is like pre-COVID. And so then enter COVID last March into this. And
now there's germs everywhere, right?
Exactly. And I'm trying really hard to move forward, but be careful, but not paranoid. And then, as you know, I live in SoCal, LA area, which clearly is not doing well right now in this pandemic. So I've been finding in the last even week, the panic is just surmounting in me. And so I guess my question for you, like from your webinar, you mentioned feel, ignore, choose. And I'm not great at the feel part. I'm not great at being present. On the fight, flight, or freeze, I freeze. That is exactly what I do. And so how do you manage this fear when maybe unlike flying, okay, with flying, the reality of a crash is probably super, super minimal. But with COVID, I could get it. And it seems more likely. So the very thing I'm afraid of is a little more likely than a plane crash.
And that's just a great question, because it confuses a lot of people when they think of the normal ways of dealing with anxiety, and quote irrational fears, right? Well, I think when I think I said this in the anxiety seminar that and I'm not going to get these numbers exactly right, but it illustrates the point that there was not one fatality there was like 10 years from '08 until 2018-ish on a commercial flight in America, and they had one, I think in 18 or 19, one woman did die, and I can't remember the number, but every day, like the thousands of people that die in car accidents or whatever time period, every week, I don't know. It's just insane. And nobody's afraid of getting in a car, right? But people have fear of airplanes. Your chances of dying in an airplane crash are just on a commercial flight are so remotely minimal. And driving down the freeway, they're not minimal at all, right? So you're right. And so you can when you have irrational fears, you can kind of there's a part of this where you can deal with it with the irrationality of it all. Well, here you go. This is not irrational, right? Now, when I said on the webinar, and I want you to go back through it, because I did kind of make this point a couple of times, that when you have something that actually can happen, we could get COVID, right? We do every day.
Right.
Lots of people do. And so then you go, but it could happen. It could happen, but it could happen, right? It could happen. It's not irrational.
Yeah.
A plane, you try to fight it with, as you said, the truth, which, by the way, is not ultimately the way to fight that. But you fight it with the truth. No, it's not going to happen. You can remind yourself that. You get over here in the COVID thing, and then you go, but it could happen. What if, right? That's right how it works. Okay.
Right.
Here's what a good anxiety specific kind of therapist would tell you if they understood the mechanisms of this. When you have the what if, okay, as soon as that fear goes, what if, right? Well, I could. What if there's germs? What if I touch all that stuff?
Yeah.
You with me? As soon
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
as soon as you engage with that, okay, even if you're trying to talk yourself out of it, as soon as you engage with that, that is the mechanism that keeps it going. See, the anxiety itself, if you remember in the seminar, I said anxiety is going to come from the physiological dance between your memory networks and your brain and your hippocampus and amygdala and all this kind of stuff. You can't control that. But what keeps it going is the engagement with it. Okay? So,
yes.
Every time you start to think through it, you're making it stronger, not weaker. That's the equivalent neurologically of somebody avoiding a plane. See, if I have the fear of the plane and I go, well, I'm not going to get on the flight, what I've just taught my brain is, oh, it is dangerous, but I'm safe if I stay off of it. And your brain goes,
I remember you.
Oh, you're right. Then we better keep fearing it, right? You get over here.
Yes.
You have this fear, this anxiety, this worry, it comes up, you engage with it, you have done it again. So when I said ignore, feel, ignore, and choose, get engaged, I'm going to apply this here. You're floating along, you're going to watch a movie or you're going to have dinner with your friends. Boom, there it comes. It comes up. What if I touch that? What if I touch that? What if I touch that? Right?
Right.
Okay. Here's what I want you to do. You go, oh, I feel that anxiety. Now, I'm not thinking about the thoughts anymore. I'm ignoring them. I'm feeling, oh, where do I feel it? Okay, my heart's beating. Oh, yeah. Feel it in my chest. Okay, that's what it feels like to be anxious. It's okay. It's not going to kill me.
Oh.
I'm going to feel that. It's not going to kill me. It's just a feeling in my body. That's all. I feel it. In other words, I am not going to be afraid of the anxiety. Right now, the anxiety kicks up and you do things to get rid of the anxiety. No. We're not going to do that anymore. I'm going to feel it because it's not going to hurt you. So I'm going to sit here and feel anxious. And then, okay, so that's what it feels like. You know what? I can still eat dinner when my heart's palpitating. I can still watch the movie and I'm going to engage. So that's what I mean by feel it. I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to engage. I'm not going to engage with the thinking my way out of it because that's going to guarantee me it's going to come back tomorrow. So I want you to go back through the anxiety event and think about it this way. A worry is the same as getting on a plane. It's the same mechanism.
Gotcha. I see.
All right.
I see. So in other words, if someone sneezes near me, I'm going to go instead of, oh, shoot.
Wait a minute. If I hear an engine go out on a plane, okay, maybe I ought to button my seatbelt. But if somebody sneezes on you, who is it? I mean, are we in the ICU and somebody's sick, or are you? We just had our family together on Christmas. Okay, what do you do? What did we do? We're going to have family together. What do we do? Everyone got tested. Okay, right before we went. All right. So if they sneezed on me, I'm not worried. But you would be.
Gotcha. I would be.
Right. So I'm not saying don't buckle your seatbelt. And this is another part of COVID fear and dealing with people with COVID fear. You do the things that will keep you safe. This is a real disease. These little boogers do exist as microbes. They're out there. They're looking for us, right? That's true. But I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I am diligent and responsible with it and pretty hardcore about it, right? I mean, I'm saying this is real and you've got to, but once you're if you know you're doing the things that are under your control, that will keep you safe, then you don't engage with the noise in your head. Okay, I can't have a whole session here on the phone, or on whatever this medium is. I
Thank
wish I
you.
could, but I want you to go back and listen to the anxiety seminar again. For those of you who haven't seen this, you can get it by going to boundaries.me/anxiety. It is still there, and you can get it. So go do that. But I wish I had more time with you. I would love to
Thank you.
see you work through this, because anxiety, as I said in
Thank you.
the seminar, it's so helpable. So helpable. All right. I think I lost her. Well, I hope Dana doesn't have a fear of calls being dropped.
No, she dropped out here. Do you want me to get her back?
That's okay. Dana, I just want to thank you. If you can hear me, I just want to thank you for your call. You've talked about something that so many people have. When you already have an anxiety disorder, you're living in a time where this stuff is real, and everybody says, well, you don't have to be that worried. And you go, what are you talking about? Look at the news. That's another thing, by the way. Why do you need to read every blip that comes out about this? If there is something that happens that they discover that if you click your heels 3 times and go around in a circle, you won't get COVID, you'll hear about it. Okay. If there's something significant, you'll hear about it. But pretty much the advice until you get a vaccine, pretty much, we know what it is. You keep your distance, you wear your mask, you wash your hands. Okay. So why do you need to be drawn? And people with anxiety do this. They keep looking. Oh, I better watch this. I better watch it. Here's another program. Oh, they found a new thing. It's been that way for months. Everybody's got an opinion. Okay. And people with anxiety get drawn into this stuff. You don't have to do that. We saw this with 9/11. People that sat and watched the news, they got re-traumatized over and 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 over. And that's digging trenches into your neurological wiring that reinforces an anxiety disorder if you have one. So find one source that you're going to check in, once a day and find out if there's been a magic cure. But if not, stay away from bombarding yourself with the news about this. If you have an anxiety disorder, it's not going to help. All righty, let's go back to the program list here. Let's talk to Edward, who's calling us from Indianapolis. Edward, welcome to the program.
Hey, can you hear me?
I got you. Welcome to the program. How can I help you?
Great. Hey, so I don't know if you can see the synopsis or not, but essentially, I've over the last year or two,
I'll tell you what I've got. It says that you're diving into some of the intellectual sides of the faith, and you have a question about your church. Kind of, that's what it says.
Yep, exactly. So
well, why don't you tell me afresh? Tell me anew.
Okay, so basically the synopsis and the question is, I've been springboarded, but because of some life events, into a lot of intellectual questions about my faith, and so I've been doing a lot of reading and listening and all this stuff, and my church has been supportive of that process.
Now, when you say you got springboarded into intellectual side of your faith, what does that mean? Did you fall into a season of a lot of doubt, and how'd you get springboarded into this?
Yeah, sure. So I'm trying to think of how to summarize. So yeah, ran into a lot of doubt, a lot of and also made a lot of really bad decisions in my Christian life. Kind of rationalizing bad decisions because of certain faith-related beliefs. So basically, I'm I'm at a point where I want to take more responsibility for what I believe and understand why I believe what I believe.
I see.
So that's still pretty abstract, but that says a little more
No,
about
I get it. I get it.
So,
I'm actually writing a book on this right now, so it's of interest to me.
oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So anyway, my church has been present with me for the most part and supportive of me learning more and asking questions. But the more I learn, the more I feel ideologically different from this church that I've been part of for a long time.
When you say ideologically,
yeah.
or theologically, or
theologically,
practically.
Well, practically and theologically, I think.
Okay, now I'm drilling down on this for a reason, so I can understand your question. So I hate to bother you with this, but when you say theologically, broadly speaking, when we look at orthodoxy, they're about, I'm going to say, probably 90% of the stuff is stuff that everybody who would find themselves as mainstream and not in some weird cult, 90% of this everybody agrees on, and the proofs for it and all of that. And there's another 10% or so that there's all sorts of, disputable stuff and varying opinions and, arguments about evidence and all of that. So when you say you're in theological problems with them, are they what every kind of Orthodox Christian would call heretical, like they're a cult, or are you talking about over here on the fringes?
Well, I think like there may be what you would be referring to as on the fringes, but they do feel pretty important to me. So I'm trying to summarize again. Let me think. So
can you give me one example?
Like,
So I mean, if we're talking about if somebody, okay,
sure.
Your church doesn't believe that Jesus was God, then that's not a fringe thing. But if they argue about whether or not somebody, should have a glass of wine with dinner, that's a fringe thing.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not even a fringe thing. That's even past a fringe thing, because that's addressed directly.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. So which would it be?
Yeah.
I mean, is it a main tenet of the faith?
Well, that depends on who you talk to, which is one thing I've discovered.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. See, that's the thing. If you're talking to a nutcase, and I mean that with all due affection, then they think that's the most important thing in the world, and it's not. If there is a mainstream view of, if you went to any mainstream denomination, okay, there are things that they would all agree on. So it doesn't depend on who you talk to in a way. That's what I'm trying to get across to you. And that helps us to kind of give weight to, what am I so bothered about? Is it worth getting bothered about? Because some things are worth getting bothered about, but other things aren't. Now, having said that, you go ahead.
Sure. So I'm trying to think of a good example that, okay, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag. And okay. So basically, the life events that I've alluded to led me to realizing that I would really like to marry a man. And so asking the question of whether I can marry a man brings up a whole host of other questions related to eschatology, hermeneutics, exegesis, all this stuff that different churches do define differently, whether they come to the answer of yes or no to my initial question. And so, wait
a minute.
A lot of stuff
how do you get to? I understand how you get, and we're getting way too technical probably for the audience. I understand why hermeneutics. I understand why hermeneutics influences. I don't understand how eschatology does. But I mean, you got very abstract there, very abstract, when this could be more kind of direct. So why don't you turn into a question? Just give me a question.
Okay. So like, so just back to, I guess the initial question is like, if I guess I'm revealing to you that I am questioning a lot of the things that the churches, I think most American conservative churches do consider fundamental. But as I've been reading up on different denominations, especially ones like overseas, it makes things feel more complex. And so I'm just wondering if I think the way that you and I are actually like right now seeing things a little bit differently is kind of parallel to how I'm seeing things differently from my church. And so if I'm that much intellectually and like philosophically and theologically different.
Wait a minute. How are we seeing? What do you mean? The way that we're seeing things differently is similar to? Do you mean that I'm saying there's a group of Orthodox tenets to the faith, and then there's things people argue about? Is that different than the way you look at it?
It is, yeah. I mean, I don't like. So I don't know if you've read, for example, like N.T. Wright, but.
We're gonna, unfortunately, for the limitations of time here, we can't go. I mean, yes, I've read N.T. Wright, but we just can't go into a lot of the particulars. But give me a question.
Yeah.
Give me a question. I'm sorry about the time.
Okay.
Time constraints here.
It's okay. So, if I am caught up in these theological, philosophical questions that my church doesn't really relate to, and like, is it wise? Does it have integrity to stay at the church if I am so intellectually different?
Okay. I think I can answer that. I know, and I can name them by name. I won't, just because the sort of for the reason of the way I'm going to answer the question for you. That the way, some very Orthodox, great, and very well known that do incredible thing that I would call evangelical churches. The way that they a lot of times we look at issues like this is, look, there are some deeply difficult issues that involve a lot of hurt. They involve a lot of families. They involve a lot of relationships. They're all of this, and typically what they'll do is say, look, we want this to be a place that's relationally safe for everyone. We want this to be a place where we come together here for the purpose of what the main purposes are. We come together to support each other and help each other and worship God and lift up the name of Jesus as God and call people unto him who says he will accept all of us and forgive all of us. And those are the main things. And so to the degree, and I'm going to answer the question the way that you ask it in the general sense about all of these other issues that don't, I'm going to say fall into that category of what's orthodoxy. There are things that people argue about that we're going to deal with those, in the way that they're being lived out, in the way that they affect this body. Okay, because some people in a lot of different issues, they're on the path of figuring this out. They need a safe place to do that. They're on the path of figuring this out for their own life. They need relationships that will embrace them and walk down that journey with them. They come up with different solutions and all of that. And there's space here for that. Okay. Jesus didn't say, that people who have all of their doctrinal boxes, theological boxes checked correctly, all of you are welcome to come to me. That's not what he said. He said, everybody can. Okay. And then we're going to figure this stuff out as it, works itself out, but we're not going to disturb. And here's my main point. We're not going to cause a church split over this. We're not going to hurt people over this. We're not going to do a bunch of that kind of stuff. Right. So we're going to figure it out. And so can you do that with integrity? I think that's something you have to talk with them about. Say, is this a place where I can grapple with this? And, and you guys grapple with me and we love each other and go through this together and figure out, can we be different and still be together? And let's talk about that. But where it doesn't turn into, something that the newspapers are writing about. And most churches, what they try to do is, even where they differ, they try to hold together as best as possible. Sometimes you have to divide. Sometimes there's some things, okay, we're just on different pages here. It's not going to work. But they try to hold together, then they fight for the love and the unity of the body, even when they disagree. And so different churches come down a different place on kind of where they land in various questions and what's going to be public, what's going to be not public, what we're going to, get in arguments about and all of that. So can you with integrity? Yeah. I think depending on the situation and the relationships, you can. So in the way you ask it, that's, I would go back and talk to them and process it and see where y'all can get to. I'm sorry about, this is the kind of thing I'd love to talk to you for 1,000 hours about, but unfortunately,
I would like that too.
We are out of time, but here's what I would leave you and others with. And I'm sorry I got to run. What I would, there's a lot of people probably listen to the show that aren't, they're not in the faith, and they go, what are y'all talking about? Well, just bear with me. There's a lot of you that are, but even those of you that aren't, this is my spiel on this, but I think I'm in accord with a lot of other people that there's some things that are very, very, very central to the faith. And basically, when it comes down to what is the faith? The faith is exactly, I've been reading through the book of Acts recently in my own quiet times. And when Paul went and tried to spread the faith, and Peter went and tried to spread the faith, what did they go spread? Well, they didn't spread a lot of, okay, here's your list on eschatology and hermeneutics and, can women be preachers or not, or all this other. No, they went and spread the faith. And here's what they said, that we as humans are alienated from a perfect God, like any other relationship, that there's been a breach, that we have done some things that aren't okay. Okay. And not only like in any other relationship, but he's the one that made us. Okay. So we're alienated. We know we're talking about loose ends on the beginning of the program. Okay. We're talking about loose ends. And there's things that got to be cleaned up. Well, God's got some things that, he says, come on, guys, I love you. I want to be in a relationship with you. And humans are looking for God, right? Where's God? Where's God? And Paul went and very, very directly said, God who made us wants us to be in a relationship with him and to provide a way back to him. He wants to forgive everything that we've been arguing about. And he wants to pay the debt for all of our wrongs. And he did that. And this man, Jesus, he appointed. This is what Paul would say over and over and over. He appointed by this one man to pay the penalty for everything we've done wrong. And by believing in him, he will accept his payment for you as forgiveness. And now we can start the new afresh. It's all wiped clean. And then he added one more thing, and he proved this. He proved this. This is not an opinion. We saw it, he said. And a bunch of us saw him. And a bunch of us saw him for many days after it happened. God proved it by raising this man, Jesus, from the dead. And they went around, and based on that proof that they had hung out with the one that was dead and crucified, they go, this is a different deal. This is not theory. And that was the message that they went out and spread. And so if somebody comes to me and says, well, you know, I want to teach at this church, but I don't believe in that resurrection thing. Okay, that's a big deal. That's what I mean. These central, there's just, and then we can argue about, discuss, and learn how to, in these other things, we've got to learn how to love and accept each other. And sometimes there are dividing lines. I understand that. Don't write me all the letters about this or, whatever. But let's keep the main thing, because that's what he did. I'm speaking of Paul, and he's the one that he and Peter and all the disciples, they're the ones that spread this message. And that's the message they spread. And they didn't give a lot of theology tests about hermeneutics and eschatology and, all these other issues. So once somebody believes that, hey, we're all in the camp together. Now, then it does go on to say that there's, certain things that we have conflicts about. We have to hold each other accountable to, and all of that. We'll get into that, but we're going to work that out as a family. The big question is, what is this family? And it's those who believe in Jesus as God. That's the family. And so once we're in that, let's try to hold together the unity of that family and work out our differences in a way that respects each other. And again, sometimes there's going to be lines drawn where you say, I can't go along with that, and maybe you have to be somewhere else, or maybe I got to be somewhere else, or there's a host of issues. But come on, there's not as many as people make it out to be. Okay, that's my 2 cents worth. I wish we could take so many more calls today, but we can't. I've gone over my time here. People get me off on a rant on theology, and we could stay there a while. It's one of my favorite topics. There you go, guys. It is getting towards the end of a year here. And time to clear up those loose ends, and time to deal with some things and go into the new year, hopefully, and taking, like we do all the time, taking an account of where we are in our lives and figuring out what we do going forward. Taking an account of our lives and figure out, what do we want to look like next year? We're going to have a seminar on that, webinar on January 4th on New Year's resolutions. Hope you join us for that. If you can't be there that day, you can stream it. If you sign up for it, you can stream it afterwards. And the rest of you, as you're looking at all these issues in your life, I encourage you, go to boundaries.me, check it out. There's so much stuff there in all these things we talk about. I encourage you to go there. And look forward to spending the rest of the year with you. Thank you for your calls. Thank you for being part of this tribe. And I'll see you tomorrow. Let me check out the time, by the way. I try to always do that at the end. What is today? Today is Wednesday. Yeah. Tomorrow. Tomorrow we're right here at 10 o'clock Pacific. Okay. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.